Kia ora, and welcome to episode 4 of this 4-part tutorial series, the final episode. Last time we rendered out our frames from Blender, and now we're going to bring them into After Effects and composite them back into our shot. Alright, so jumping in here, we have our solids from our previous project, so let's delete those. We don't need them anymore, and let's import our file. I only rendered one frame because that's all I need for this, but you'll want to check that OpenEXR sequence is selected. Let's import that and drag it in. I'm going to go to frame 100, and you see we just have a black solid. This is essentially a container that has all of the render passes that we enabled in Blender. So this will let us access them. We need to extract that information from this container using the aptly named plugin Extractor, which comes with After Effects. So let's drag Extractor onto our footage. Now if I click here, we have access to all of our passes in one container. So we're going to select foreground combined to start with, and that's going to bring in our houses. They are a little dark because they're in the wrong color profile. So let's select the effect color profile. Sorry, I spelled it correctly by accident. Color profile converter. And let's check that on there. And we're going to check this box that says linearize input profile. And that's going to bring back our colors to what we would expect. Let's bring in our other layers now. So we're going to take this and duplicate it. And let's name the top one foreground. And the bottom one, let's call it shadow. Now we can simply go to our extractor effect and we can go to our shadow combined layer, and that will drop in our shadow. See that? Let's add in our other layers now. So I'm going to duplicate the shadow layer. I'm going to go to my layers and let's add in our light reflection here. So what we want to do is we want to go to our reflection direct. We're not going to choose combined. Remember we enabled that in that direct pass in our render passes. So we're going to go to our reflection direct view layer and then select our glossy direct pass. Okay? And that's going to drop this in, which is essentially our light with a black screen. Now, because our light is illuminating the scene, it's additive, we can get rid of this black with the blending mode. So we can go down here and we have two additive blending modes. We have add and screen, probably lighten as well. For this purpose, we're going to use screen. So let's enable that. And there we go. Now we have our 3D light source casting a reflection on our real floor. Now we have one more layer to add. So let's duplicate, well, let's rename this to gloss direct. Glod direct. It's now glod direct, okay? Let's take our shadow layer and duplicate it again and rename it to glod indirect. And let's set this one again to our reflection indirect pass and our glossy indirect, our reflection indirect view layer and our glossy indirect pass. And that gives us the same kind of thing. If I turn off this direct one, you can see we have just our reflections here. Now we could set this to screen as well, and that does work, but technically this is still additive, and I don't think we really want to be adding more light with this pass. So I'm going to set this to normal. And I'm going to search here for a plugin called Unmalt by Red Giant. Now up to version 1.1 is free, and I will link that in the description. But it's called Unmalt, and we're going to grab that and we're going to drag it onto our glossy indirect layer. And that's going to remove the black for us without making it additive. And now you can see we have the reflection of our house, And this house, we even have a little bit of the light bouncing off the house onto the ground. Turn that off and on again. And we have the reflection of the house in our bowl as well. Now we are getting a little bit of a line here where I haven't perfectly lined up our bowl layer. Forgive me, I'm trying to keep these tutorials kind of condensed. So we can kind of cheat again, and we'll clean that up with a mask. So I'm going to set this mask to subtract, and I'm going to feather it by, say, 15 pixels or so, and that will clean that up. And now we have just our reflection there. Okay, what we want to do this now is sort of just match the colors, the brightness, intensity levels, and the saturation. And I'll show you a really good way to do that without just trusting your eye. So if we go to our foreground layer first, in the top right corner here we have this info window. If that's not there, you can probably go to Window and Info and turn that on. What this gives us is a hue, saturation, and brightness value. And if I hover over any part of the frame, it's going to tell me that value. So if I hover over this pure white, the brightness is 100%. So we want to make sure that these match between our CG elements and our real life footage. So I'm going to find a dark area of our real footage, like this one here. And I can see that our brightness level in this dark area is sitting around 10%. I'm going to go to our CG element here. And ignoring this impossibly black area, I'm going to look at a dark shadow area of our model, and I can see that we're sitting around 6, I think it's all 5% there, 4% even. So I'm going to check a levels effect, color correction, and I'm just going to bring this up so that it matches our real footage. In this case, it's not overly different to start with, but little tweaks go a long way. So now we're sitting kind of around 9-10% over here, a tiny bit more, just to boost that up to match. 8%, we're getting close, a little bit more. And yeah, now we're sitting around 9-10%. So let's go with that. Now we don't really have any bright highlights on our 3D model. And maybe that's something I should have considered when making this tutorial. This light here, as you can see, it's going above 100%, so it's not really a realistic representation. So I'm just going to find like this ping on this chair here, and I can see that that's sitting around 70%. And I'm going to find something that I think should be maybe a similar value in our scene. It's sitting around 50-60%, and I'll just kind of bring that up to match. So a tiny bit more. Yeah, now we're sitting at around 70% there. Good. Now that we've got our black point and our white point set for our CG layer, we can actually kind of adjust the gamma by eye. So we can kind of move that around until we get something that feels natural to us. And we can tweak that a little bit later as well. So let's add in here color correction, a hue saturation node. And if we look at our saturation value for this piece of wood here, this chair, we can see that we're sitting around 70%. And if we look at, let's grab a roof tile, something that might be a similar value, and we can see that we're sitting around 55%. So let's boost our saturation up and take a look. And now we're sitting around 70% as well to match our chair leg. Alright, so now we've got our saturation lined up there. I'm going to just go back into my levels now that I've done that. A lot of back and forth is pretty good, and try to bear in mind I'm trying to keep this condensed to 10 minutes, so this kind of tweaking does take time. When you do your scene, just, you know, take your time with it and go back and forth tweaking these settings until it looks right to you. So I've just boosted the camera a little bit again just to blend that in, and that's looking pretty good. I'm also going to go to my shadow now, and I can see that this is quite dark, and the circle is being cast by the bottom of our lantern here. So what we can do to kind of improve that is, first of all, we can bring down the opacity to match. So I can press T here and I can bring down the opacity maybe to 80%, and that'll kind of soften that shadow a little bit. I can also go to color correction and add a tint effect. And then I can sample kind of like a dark real shadow and kind of like a lighter real shadow, and it'll tint those colors to match. Let's put that about 50%. You can see that's adding some tint there as well, maybe less, maybe 25. And we can also bring a levels effect, and we can go to the reds, kind of warm this up. Let's bring in some red in the shadows and a little bit of green in the shadows to kind of match our footage a little bit more closely. Good. Also, I'm going to go to our glossy indirect layer, and just looking at this reflection here, I think it could be a bit darker. So I'm going to go to my color correction curves and kind of drag this over and darken that up slightly. You can see the effect that it's having there. And there you have it. This is the final result that I showed you in the beginning. All I've done is I've rendered out the rest of the animation, and I've added a little bit of a color grade at the end, and I've changed the aspect ratio. But there it is. That's it. We're done. So I hope that you learned something interesting from this tutorial. I hope that you apply it to your own projects and do some really cool stuff. Let me know in the comments if this was useful to you, because otherwise I've wasted so much of my time. Also, sorry about the curtain. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.